You're listening to Underworld on the Ghost Radio Network.
Ghost Radio Australia.
Listen.
Hauntings. The unexplained. Synchronicity. EVP.
So why are you?
I heard that.
Absolutely fascinating.
What are Midlights? Is it real? What do you think?
I love you.
The unseen.
I'm alright.
1111. Who or what are mutilating cattle?
Listen.
Poltergeists. Your stories. Your experiences. Listen close.
Trisha McCagh is an internationally recognised animal communicator. Trisha believes we are all born with the ability to speak the silent language of the animals, and it is simply a matter of relearning this skill. I chatted with Trisha briefly last month when she was here for the Conscious Living Expo, and I was so impressed with this lady, what she had to say, and just all that she's willing to do for the world, that I've asked her back now to have more of a chat with us. Welcome back to Ghost Radio, Trisha.
Hi Leah, how are you?
Good. How was the Conscious Living Expo? I heard you were very, very busy.
Oh, extremely busy, honestly. It took me a week to recover, but it was absolutely awesome. The amount of people that came and the amount of work we did and, you know, the awareness we created. It was just fantastic. Just loved it.
And you're also, we've just been chatting before coming on air tonight, that you are so super busy that you're almost booked out for all of your workshops. But if people want to come along and they hear this and they feel that it's absolutely something that they've got to do with Trisha, you know, contact her because she can arrange to do another one.
Absolutely. Because I'm at the Perth Zoo on the 1st and 2nd of November to do a workshop, and we're holding an advanced workshop later in November up in Mount Helena. So it's 3 days, pretty comfortable though, Leah. But we're up with all the wildlife up there, and we'll be communicating with all the animals and communing with nature, which is fantastic. So looking forward to it.
So if this is something that you want to do, people, after you've heard Trisha here and you have seen Trisha at the Conscious Living Expo and you know it's something that you want to do, get yourself organised, email Trisha and get yourself booked in, because she does book out super, super fast because she's so good at what she does. We talked about this briefly when I spoke to you last time, Trisha, but give us a understanding again of what you mean by the silent language of animals.
Well, basically, the animals communicate amongst themselves, their own species and other species, and with us, because we're, of course, another species, in a silent language. So we were actually born with this. So before we verbalized, we were able to use this type of telepathic or intuitive language that the animals use. That's why you see little children, toddlers, and sitting with animals, and they're all getting on so well because they're actually communicating. Now, once we, get a few years older and we start to verbalise and we go to school, it sort of gets lost by the wayside, It's a bit like a muscle we don't use. It kind of, gets a bit of atrophy and we forget about it. And all I'm doing is teaching people, and they're relearning this skill and this ability that we had when we were born. So we can communicate with any animal, any species on the planet. There's just no limit because it's like a universal language.
I found that so interesting. You said this last time, that doesn't matter if it's lion, cheetah, bug or beetle. They all talk.
They all do. They all have consciousness. They're all able to use this language. And really, it does not take much to reconnect you with it. People think, oh, maybe it's just something somebody else can do. It's untrue. Everybody who comes to the workshop will be communicating with the animals by the first afternoon. Absolutely.
Wow. Now, I was thinking the other day, I was at the park with my daughter, and there's a large beehive in the tree, which I think is just fantastic. And I was thinking, something like a bee, do you talk to the hive consciousness, or do you talk to individual bees?
Well, it depends. Now, if an individual bee has landed on me, and I'm a bit concerned about that,
Shoot,
to the individual bee. But if, for instance, I wanted to know something about the hive, or it was in a very inappropriate place, and they were in danger of being terminated or exterminated, then I would talk to the hive as a whole, the whole consciousness or the group consciousness. And usually you'll find that there'll be an animal, or an insect spokes insect, that's what you call it, and they'll come forward and be speaking on behalf of the others, and then you can find out the information that you need.
Have you had much success or had an experience like that where you've had to say to the hive, look, you need to move or you're going to be, exterminated, basically?
Well, I've had quite a bit of experience with this, and so have other people that have contacted me, and we're talking about mice in the house. We're talking about, those dreaded ants.
Yeah.
Come in and are up your wall. I mean, I love them personally and try to live with them, but, it obviously doesn't suit everybody. So if we've got hives or, bees or wasps and things like that, yes, I have. Now, what you'll find is that you need to sometimes communicate with them a few times to make sure it's clear. So what we're doing is saying, look, this is an inappropriate place. Is it possible for you to move? Otherwise, I'll have no other choice than to so on and so on. And a lot of the times, hives are a bit different because they've spent a lot of time and effort. This is what people don't realise. They've spent so much energy formulating that hive. Do you know what I mean? Forming all the components of that hive. They've spent a lot of time and energy, and some of those bees do only live a certain amount of time. So this is why they would find it sometimes difficult to just pack up and leave. It's not like they can get a box and move their hive somewhere else. Yeah. They actually have to rebuild it somewhere else. And so this is quite a big ask. Now, with the ants, it's a little bit different because we're just asking them, can they trail outside? And a lot of the time, they have left. Really? They have literally left. Other times, they've said, no, we'll take our chances because this is where we want to be. And then you have no other alternative. But at least if you have communicated with them and told them of the repercussions and what's going to happen, yes, absolutely. People have had mice leave as well, or they've run a deal where they've said to the mice, well, look, what about if I put some food down in the back shed, blah, 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 will you move down there? And people have actually had mice relocate down there. But as I said, it's not always that simple. Sometimes the animals choose, no, I have as much right to be here as you, and they want to stay. So therefore you have to draw your own conclusions. Which is true, really, isn't it, when you think about it? Absolutely. Last time I spoke to you, I've had this habit. I love the garden. I'm in the garden all the time. And I do tend to send out to trees and things, I'll be trimming you on the weekend, withdraw your life essence, or be aware that I'll be trimming you on the weekend, and, talking. And it's got a lot of spiders in my garden, so I took that one step further after speaking to you last time and said, I'll be trimming that grevillea, and those brown spiders that hang out in there, if you could just move on and, not scare me, I would really, really appreciate it because I've had some great big, whatever those brown spiders are that live in grevilleas, they just about give me a heart attack each time. And I'm pleased to say that so far, no big brown spiders. No, they will move, and they're really appreciative of you spending the time to let them know what's happening because, I just don't think people realise that, we are all sharing this earth, and even though it's your garden, that was their habitat beforehand. Yeah, for sure. And, we've got to learn to live with them. I mean, if they come inside, I don't kill them. I just merely relocate them outside. Yeah. Because they've wandered in here because there's shelter or they're looking for food or, some other reason. And I've just indicated, okay, we can't live together like this. Plus I have cats in the house. Yeah. And they'll get killed anyway. So I take them back outside. Now, you'll find that I had a few people do this where they had the big orb weavers, right near their front door. They had about 6 of them, and they asked if the one closest to the door could relocate. After 2 days, it relocated further away. Great. Because we're now living with this synergy, and this is really, really important that we do this. And we've also got to see that they're running out of habitat out there. We can't keep asking them at times, can you relocate? Can you do this to suit me? We've got to learn to have a bit of compatibility with them as well and try to, sort of live as one and say, well, okay, right near the door I can understand, but even if it's just back a bit or, I had a spider right on my water tap outside, and I said to it, I don't mind you being here, but every time I turn the tap on, I'm going to ruin your web. And I know you spent a lot of time and effort doing that. By the second day, it had relocated. because I indicated that it wasn't because I was, it just happens to be my tap.
Yeah.
And I need to water the garden to keep the plants alive for you to live in. So, could you relocate because I don't want to wreck your home each time. So, he took a little bit of convincing, but after a while, after the second time, he realised he needed to relocate because I had no alternative.
And
he just kept making it on the tap,
Exactly, and a gardener once said to me ages ago, because I said, I had a lot of bugs and insects and bits in my backyard, and they made me realise, they said, well, that's actually a really great compliment, because insects and having that many insects in your garden means that it's a well-balanced, obviously a great place for bugs and spiders and things to hang out. And I took that as the greatest compliment. I thought, I must be doing...
Absolutely. And look, we all love David Attenborough. He's a guy who's shown us a different side to animals, physically, and it's just been absolutely amazing. And he did a whole show on bugs, and when you watch the insects, you'll realise that they are actually, they formulate a part of the food web or the food chain in the ecosystem that is absolutely vital, that virtually without them we die. And people don't realise their importance, and it's the same as spiders. Spiders keep the insects to a certain level. You've got to always have predators and prey, or that's what they do. So if you keep killing off your spiders, I've been inundated with, mosquitoes, and I have so many, flies, or I have so many, that's because you've killed off the very one predator that they have. And people don't realise that they're actually creating an imbalance all of the time. And their life would be a lot easier if they would just allow nature to take its course.
I had an issue only last week, and I thought, I must ask Trisha about that. I didn't know whether to feel horrified or what about it. My cat, Apollo, who I've discussed with you before, fantastic cat, love him to bits. He bought me a present last week of a big rat, and he dropped it on my back mat with much like, look what I have for you. And I didn't know whether to feel horrified or... So what does that mean when your cat's doing that? And I kind of said to him, Apollo, please don't do that again. you know.
Apollo is obviously a great hunter.
Yeah, he is.
And it's he, isn't it?
It is he, yeah.
Yes, he wants to be acknowledged for his hunting skills. Now, you've got to remember, he is very instinctually a cat. So what he would do as his role... as a male in a family situation or in any situation, even if he was bringing it back to other males, is showing his prowess, and that's what he's doing. He also, many cats have told me that they see it as part of their job. Like the humans do this and they do that and they provide the food. Well, I want to make a contribution. So they're showing you their skills and abilities, because sometimes we have a tendency to go, lovely kitty, puss, and, big fluff and, bit of a rub there, and off they go. Whereas they want to be respected for other things. So especially for males, they want to be respected for their hunting, and because we may have the sexton, which we've now taken this reproductive ability, which has quite a high class in the animal kingdom.
I imagine.
So they do it in other ways. So the best thing you can do in that situation is praise him to the max. Absolutely say, you're a great hunter, this is just fantastic, give him a big rub, give him a treat, whatever you want. Then you can, quietly remove the rat. Now, if the people who go off at their cat and say, oh, my God, what did you do this for? And then they hoik it over the back fence into the rubbish bin, don't give him that respect. He'll bring back something bigger and gorier next time. Most probably it will be decapitated.
It's so interesting you should say that, because Apollo's getting old now. He's kind of 10 or 11, and my daughter just adores him, and she literally, drags him around. She's only 8 and she dresses him and all the rest of it. And I've been saying to him, love, be careful. He's getting old now. And I truly felt, and what you're saying is true, that when he bought it to me and dropped it, he was rubbing up and down my legs and look at how wonderful I am. Look what I've got for you, Mum. But I also thought he was saying to me, I'm not that old.
Exactly. And he's wanting that appreciation from you.
Yeah. But
also that recognition, because, realistically, that's not old for a cat.
No, isn't it?
Because cats should really live till 20 at least.
Okay.
And really that's just halfway. It's a bit like, a middle-aged person.
Yeah.
And I think middle-aged people, the 50's a new 30, but 50-year-olds certainly don't want to be thinking they've got one foot in the grave just yet.
So if he's old, I'm old.
So look, there was a communicator in America, and she had a horse at her workshop, and anyway, she got the participants to ask the horse its age. And she knew that her horse was 22. So anyway, she asked the people, and all the people at the workshop, 2/3 or 3/4 of the class said, he's 5. And she went, okay, something's going down here, because there's no way 3/4 of the class would have got just one particular number.
Yeah.
So she took her horse over to the side, and she said, what are you doing? You're not 5. And he said, no, but I prefer to be 5, because when I say 22, they all go, oh.
Yeah.
And he said, they make me feel old, but when I say I'm 5, they go, oh.
He's just a sprightly young buck. Yeah, yeah.
So it wasn't that he wanted to lie, it's just that the way people react, and that's the same with us. I mean, people don't want to say they're 50 or 60, they'd rather say they're 25 or 30 or 35 because of this reaction, and animals get the same thing. So certainly he doesn't want to think he's over the hill yet, and don't you think I'm a useless old cat, because I'm not.
Yeah.
I can still bring home the bacon, I can still bring home everything.
That's literally what I thought it was, because I was just trying to protect him, because he is slowing down a little bit, but I really felt that he was saying to me, look, I've still got it, and so, I don't know, I suppose I'll just let Amy drag him around.
Well, yeah, and he's probably brought in a really big rat.
It was huge.
It took a lot to drag down.
It was absolutely
huge. I've brought it for you.
Yeah.
So why don't you take it inside and have it for afternoon tea?
Oh, God. Now, I was wondering, do animals have the same issues we do, as in, do they have, shall I say, the petty emotions of jealousy? Do they have their heart broken? Do they get depressed? Do they have those range of emotions, or not really?
Yes, they do. They have all of those emotions. They, as individuals, have personalities as we do. But let me tell you that there's a bit of a difference between wild and domestic. Now, the domestic animals go through more of that range of emotions because they live with us.
Right, yeah.
So they'll probably go through it more. In the wild, it's a bit more instinctual, so there's not as much jealousy and so on, because it's just a part of nature, and they kind of get on with it. But any animals in captivity or any animals in different situations, yes, they will. And you'll find that, an animal, look, even in the wild, when you're brought up about, loss or grief or anything like that, that is even very, very prevalent in the wild. I mean, you only have to look at elephants. If they lose a loved one, they actually try to bury it.
I know.
And they are very much into that. But in the domestic situation, you'll find that a dog that's been with another dog for ages, they will pine for it. And you will have these same degrees of loss. Now, I just did a consultation for a lady with this horse the other day, and she was saying that a year ago, she went on holidays, and she had these 2 horses. And one of the horses became seriously ill and died while she was away.
Oh, gee.
Now, these 2 horses were the best of friends. And when she came back, her relationship had changed with the surviving horse. And she said, does this horse blame me because I wasn't there at the time? And what the horse was going through was, she was saying to me that she lost this friend and she didn't know where she went. Like, where did she go? And she said, and then, her person was away as well. She said, everybody seemed to have abandoned me. Have I been bad? Why is everyone leaving me? Am I going to leave? And she was fearing for her own survival. So no, she wasn't blaming that person. She just couldn't understand why she was going through this. Everyone was away and they disappeared mysteriously, because obviously the person got on a plane and the horse didn't know that. And of course the other horse died very suddenly. And she said, and she was my rock, so I don't know what to do without her now, this other horse. And I said, well, look, they're bringing in another companion for you. How do you feel about that? She said, no, I'm too scared to get close because she might go again. So, yeah, they do go through this range of emotions. And she even had a problem with her leg, and I said to her, this was caused from trying to get out to find that lost horse, that the horse that was that died. And she said, that makes sense, because she said, I believe she did sustain an injury, but we don't know when it was and how it happened. I said, no, she was trying to get over the fence.
So obviously,
I can tell you which leg it's in. It's in the right-hand side. It's in the right rear leg, and it was.
So obviously, the horse that had died had been didn't have a chance, obviously, to say goodbye, or didn't know that it was dying, or
no, because it was taken obviously to a vet and
then put down or something.
It was away and it died. It just died very suddenly.
Yeah.
And she was probably in a different paddock.
Yeah,
They took her off to treat her.
Yeah.
So and they took her to the vet. So this is the problem. And this horse just didn't know where she went and thought there might be something wrong with her, and so she tried to get to her. And this is what happened. She injured herself. And that's why she was lame, and nobody knew why. But she had clearly shown me what she had tried to do, and I knew that it was in her right rear leg. and even where the injury was sustained, because she's telling me. So it's quite amazing that this range of emotions, and these animals feel that, and they especially feel it when we're going through it. It cuts them up. They have a terrible time if we're suffering a loss or grief, and they're in the house with us, and they can feel our sadness, because animals are beings of joy, so they're not used to this level of sadness.
Yeah, and I suppose it shows the importance of why animal communication on a mass level is so important. If you're going away, for goodness sake, tell your pet, I'm going away, there's somebody coming in to look after you, or we're taking you to a kennel. You haven't done anything wrong, we're just going away, we'll be back to get you, and it would alleviate so much problem.
And what I get people to do is to visualise yourself leaving with your suitcase, saying goodbye, and then visualising yourself coming back in the door with your suitcase and making a big fuss of that animal.
Yep.
So that they know in their mind you're coming back.
Yep.
Because when you leave for a period of time, they don't know if you're coming back.
Yep.
They get thoughts that you might, because they can see telepathy, and this intuitive type of silent language can be done over a distance. So in other words, I can go overseas and talk to my cats here.
Yeah.
And I don't have any, they don't fret, they don't have any problems, my animals, when I go away, because they know exactly where I am and I'm coming back. But people don't do that. They're so, wherever they are on holidays, there's so much going through their mind that when the animal's not going to sit there and tap in all day. When they do tap in, there's all these thoughts of what they're seeing.
Yeah.
Not about coming back.
Yeah.
So they're worried that these new surroundings are not where they are. So what does this mean? Is this person coming back, or maybe they're never coming back? And that's why you get this terrible fretting, that goes on with animals. So this communication definitely, is quite limitless in its abilities to, create a better understanding.
I wanted to touch now a bit more on the metaphysical type stuff. Have animals had conversations with you about our origins, their origins? Do they talk of God, or?
They're talking of the great source, and what they've explained to me about themselves is that they are from different dimensions. So they've explained to me that they come from, each species comes from a different level of dimension.
Yep.
And that they also correlate to a colour based in our energy system, with different animals going to different colours and relating to different dimensions. So they come from different stars, and they said we do the same. We come from various different places in different dimensions, and we're all here for different purposes, which we already know, I'm sure. But yeah, we do come from different stars, and so do they. But they've also let me know that they can interchange, so they don't always have to be an animal.
Right.
They can be whatever they choose to be, the same as we can.
And so this nonsense of, some people believe, when you reincarnate, the lowest form would be the animals, and then you move up into the human thing. That you were saying that's not true, from what you understand.
It's not true, because that's, it's not even, it's my understanding, but also it's what I've been told directly and been shown and been proven to. I think that's just, I think that a lot of the time that's an egotistical view of the humans.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest, if we're so evolved, why is the world in such a mess?
Oh, really?
Because we're not handling it. We've lost our connection to the planet. We've lost our connection to nature. We can't live in the present, which, whether you be Buddhist or Tibetan or, any form where they go into a state of quiet and meditation meditation is merely being in the present, as you know, Leah. I mean, that's what meditation is. You don't have to sit there and say hom. You are in the actual presence. We're in the right now. We're in being. And animals are in that state all the time. We've lost that. So if we've evolved, people might ring up and say, well, we're here to learn something else. Well, the animals already know why they're here. It's like we come down here and don't know, so that we work through things. We knew before we came, but we've come down here and we're working through our evolvement or, our path, our journey. Animals come to this planet with already 3 of their chakras already fully developed, and they also have the knowledge. So they are here for a totally different purpose to us, and they're here to work with us, to guide us, and to teach us many things. It's a pity that more people don't become more observant to the animals. They have a lot to show us.
Yeah. A lot of the channeled information that comes through talks about the cetaceans or the whales and the dolphins particularly being star-seeded. So you would agree with that?
Yes, I have actually seen the whales and the dolphins in Pleiades, in the near the Pleiades star. It's a very similar dimension.
Yep.
And I've actually seen unicorns there.
Okay.
So we've got, because the whales and the dolphins are really together, they're of a totally different energy system. So what happens is all these different species, as we call them, they're actually just different levels of energy.
Yep.
And not as in higher or lower, just different types of energy. So they sit in different dimensions. And when the animals are here on the planet, they form these tapestries of energy. And so they actually could have a really strong base of what happens on the Earth. And so what we've done is removed a lot of the species. So in other words, what they told me about extinction is that in the first instance, some animals go extinct without our intervention because their energy system is finished. So as the Earth, as such, is moving into different dimensions, as we were talking about earlier, as we're moving into these changes of energy, well, the energy held by certain animals with the tapestries that actually, anchor us to certain planets and solar systems, and what actually happens on this planet. As they are no longer needed, they create their own extinction. And then all of a sudden, these animals turn up, and these scientists will say, "Oh, we've just seen an animal that we've never seen before, and we don't know where it's come from, but blah blah." Well, that's the new energy that's required on the planet. Now, the ones that we're actually causing is creating an imbalance in the planet, and that's where the imbalance with the nature comes in. Whether you talk about tsunamis, whether you talk about a lack of rain, climatic change, that's from causing an imbalance with these tapestries.
Right, so...
And they formulate that with the plants also.
Right, so it's like we pulled a thread out of the rug that still actually needs to be there.
Absolutely, and then we wonder why that happened.
Yeah.
But we've actually caused those extinctions. In other words, those animals' energies needed to be there. They all form like keys to the big picture, and what we're doing is losing some of the keys. And then we're battling with that.
So things like unicorns and dragons, obviously you would say, first up, obviously, yes, they did exist.
Yes.
And
they still do in a certain energy form.
And they withdrew their energy how long ago?
Well, I haven't actually had a dragon tell me that, but a long time ago. But the unicorns particularly, because even in their horn, their horn, it's like very high frequency in the top of that. They want to let people know that they are still very much around. They may not be physically on the planet, but their energy tapestries are still connected here. And so they are of a very important, and that's why they are around the dolphins and the whales.
Okay.
And so they're all still forming these energy systems. So they're still there, they're just outside, you know what I mean? They're more in the cosmic area.
And will they be, shall I say, returning as we develop our, as we move into the next dimension or the more, the different energies?
They're telling me they will return, but they may be returning in a slightly different form.
Okay.
But the energy will be, of unicorn. So, that's quite interesting. And the same as the dragon, again, will be returning, but will be returning in a different physical and, the energy will be the same, but they'll be coming maybe in a different form that will be pertaining to that particular involvement of the planet, because it definitely is evolving, as we know, and is speeding up, and that's why we're having these conversations, because people are becoming more aware and moving into these stages of evolvement, and the animals play a particularly big part.
So I'm wondering whether it's more, rather they return as more kind of we evolve up and they kind of perhaps meld back into our energy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. They just come in because we've caught up.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I do, that's what I was trying to kind of,
so that's what you say, we have to evolve for them to come back on this planet because it's not of the right energy system for them.
Okay, so as we become...
Their frequency is a bit too high.
Yeah.
They would have to adjust too greatly. So they need that energy to evolve and go into a higher vibration for them to come back on this planet, absolutely.
And is that the same with things such as Yowies and Yetis and things like that?
Yeah, they're all a little bit different, and they'll probably come in at different stages. So there won't be a big shift and go, oh, great, we're going to get all those back on the planet. Some won't return, some will just be working from the cosmos, and some will be coming back here to work with us.
Yeah.
And they haven't fully informed me because they said, it depends what the humans do. And
Always.
at what stage we get to, and when that's going to be, because we do have a big hand in changing things. They have, however, and this is probably going to create a little bit of fuss, isn't it, that we just have, that the ratio of humans to animals and other nature areas is just too high.
Really?
There is too many of us.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is creating the biggest imbalance, unfortunately.
Well, and that would actually make a lot of sense to me as well. And we impede on their turf, shall we say.
Well, yeah, because we're all sharing this energy, and what we're doing is that one species is wiping out the tapestries of others, and that tapestry is taking over, and it's too top-heavy, so we can't sustain it that way. Energy will not be sustained with that predominance, and that's why we're having a lot of problems here.
And I mean, if you look at it, really, I mean, all of Earth and all of Mother Nature and all of this planet is a delicate balance,
Well, it is, Leah, but it even goes on to say that thought is energy. And as we know, the level of thought can change consciousness. So what we've got too much thought energy from human species and not enough from the being and the presence of animal and plant and other sort of species, if you know what I mean.
I do, yeah.
Because they were creating a different consciousness before because of their process. Now we're absolutely overruling that process, and now we're all in turmoil because with the humans and the way they think, they're not all thinking as one. They're all thinking as individuals. So we have a mixed bag of scattered energy.
Yeah.
And that's creating a lot of the turmoil on the planet.
So if you looked at it like a composition, the drums are drowning out the violins and the piano. No one can hear anything but the drums.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, and it needs to be brought back in so that everything, everybody can hear the song, as it were.
Well, nature does do that in its own way through its own natural, disasters, as we call it, trying to get that balance back. But it does take time, and man just doesn't seem to see what nature is really asking us to do. It's really quite simple. And they say, well, it's not simple, but it is really. It's just that because of money and progress, nobody wants to do anything. Because if they don't make money out of it, then they're not going to promote it. And that's why they're wiping out rainforests to make these farms, because they're making millions of dollars out of it. But by wiping out the rainforest, they've just knocked out an intrinsic part of climate. So, for instance, I actually learnt myself something the other day, biologically, that mammals on the planet live a lot longer in captivity than they do in the wild. However, reptiles don't.
Is that right?
And they didn't know why. And I was talking to keepers and things like that, zookeepers, and the snakes have told me why.
And why is
that? And they're saying to me that they're kept in a very unnatural environment. And as much as humans think that they've sussed out the biological components or physiological components of a reptile, and they're trying to adjust this in what they're doing in its enclosure, they said it goes beyond that. The pythons have told me in particular that how they put the heat lamps and how they adjust the temperature is not pertaining to each individual breed, for starters, and secondly, there's something intrinsic in the climatic changes that sets off different changes within their body, whether it be shedding, reproduction, you name it. That's what happens. They adjust to the climate. It has not been fine-tuned in these enclosures. Now, the mammals, so if we talk, about lions and tigers and things like that, even though they're brought into an enclosure, they're still out in the climate. They're just confined.
Yes.
Whereas a reptile is living in an unnatural environment. So can you see that it answers its own question, really?
Yes, yeah.
And that's why a lot of reptiles aren't very happy. I don't think reptiles should be domesticated anyway. But they're very unhappy because their bodies don't feel natural. They've told me they feel very strange most of the time. And that's probably why they snap. I mean, we all have our own... if you go to a snake breeder, they'll tell you, well, they're snapping because of this, this, and this. But, if you ask the snake, The snake is the best one to tell you why they're snapping or why they're unhappy.
Yeah.
And I've even had snakes, people phone me because their snake has escaped and they want me to help locate the snake. And the snakes have told me the enclosures are just too hot, and we've gone and checked them and they are. There's been something wrong with the thermostatic control and they were too hot. The snake was actually getting away from something very uncomfortable. So, you know, there's these things that humans just don't understand, and they need to listen to what these animals are trying to tell us. And once the snakes told me that, it was just very, very basic for me to understand why they don't last very long in captivity for that reason. And I know that in many situations they try to do their best for the snakes, but, you know, reptiles are a very unusual animal, and they just have certain components that need to be adjusted within the climate, and there's no way that you can reproduce nature.
No, that's true. Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Talking about reptiles and snakes and things, our indigenous culture, you know, it has the rainbow serpent. How do you view that as an animal communicator? Is that something what we were talking about before, like the unicorns and the dragons, that is a dimensional being, or?
Well, it is, but the snake is very prevalent with the kundalini. It's got very, very amazing spiritual aspects. So the rainbow serpent, it is. I think it's symbolic of all of that.
Yep.
And again, we have our symbolisms as well.
Yeah.
But it's symbolic of the process or the concept. And again, it's like in any culture. I mean, we might say ours is God, somebody else says Allah, somebody else says Buddha, but it's all the same that we're talking about.
Yes.
And here I feel it's the same. It's just the symbology. They have different names, but really it's that this greater source created all.
Yes.
And that's the whole. It doesn't matter what animal you speak to or what area of metaphysics. It really all comes from the same componentry. We just call it different things depending on our beliefs or how it came to us. So it's not that each belief is so wrong or so different. They're just different in the way that they see and perceive it. I know so much about the animals purely because the animals talk to me. So if you're a person that you don't hear them, well, then that knowledge might come to you in a different way from something else, but might be slightly different.
So if you were going to communicate with the rainbow serpent, it wouldn't be so much with a snake as so much as perhaps what we were talking about with the hive as a source or a consciousness.
It would be it would be more of a snake consciousness, but the symbolism of the snake.
Okay.
It would be more of that consciousness I would be contacting, like a higher source. It's a little bit like when I am talking to the whales. I'm not talking to a whale.
Right.
Their consciousness is of the energetic consciousness that I'm actually connecting with when I'm channeling, or, you know, because the whales have often given me messages regarding why they beach or why they do things on this planet, because they are of a very high consciousness and they hold such a great energy on this planet. I would hate to think what would happen if we didn't have the whales, because they unseemingly go unnoticed. They're very large animals and they just form networks through the oceans.
Yes.
They form networks of energy that we don't even know about. And what happens is, again, the humans get on board and upset those networks, and again we have this imbalance. And the whales have explained to me that the reason we do what we do is to show the imbalance to the humans, to show them that they must stop what they're doing and they must think about things. And I said, well, they just seem to think you beach because either, you know, you're not well or the sonar of the boats. And they said, that's true, but do you notice that we're starting to take dolphins and sharks with us now? Because your scientists will then go, well, why are the dolphins and sharks beaching? So he said that the whales have said to me they will look into it, that our scientists will look into it further and will hopefully make that discovery. They're hoping for that breakthrough, the whales, that humankind will realise that what they're doing has to be stopped. They have to think about things. They have to realise what they're doing to their own planet that we live on. And they said, do they not realise that if they kill that, they're killing themselves? Because this is their whole level of existence. And I said, yeah, they kind of know it, but possibly not to that. They just always think it's going to be there. And they said, but that's not true, because they can take it to a point of no return.
Yeah.
And that's what the animals are concerned about.
So truly the whales are kind of making the ultimate sacrifice.
They are.
Yeah.
And they said that whales have been allocated and come down here on this planet purely to do that.
Wow.
they have been allocated, and they have gone willingly to help mankind.
And there was obviously some press that I'm sure you were very aware of not long ago with some euthanising of whales and what way it should have been done and whether it should have been done. What are your thoughts on that, can I ask you?
Well, look, euthanizing an animal is a big thing, but especially with a whale, and people don't really understand that often euthanizing a whale, it is very uncomfortable. But euthanizing any animal, why are we doing it? If they are sick, or there's nothing that can be done, then fine. But they've really got to be thinking about what they're creating and why they're doing it, because a lot of the time it's for convenience, and they've got to think about things. And the whales have said to me that they end up switching off. Like a lot of animals, actually, their consciousness leaves before they go through that very nasty stage.
Yes.
They actually depart prior to that. So it's not a big deal. But the reason the whale rides the physical form, or any animal, is to show the humans that they need to give things more thought. They need to have a compassionate component. They need to really be looking at why they're doing it and really what they're doing it, because euthanizing is putting to death. And it's not to say that you can't do this in vets, because vets have to do it and animals actually welcome it. But we're talking about the animals that are welcoming it, that are sick, and they're absolutely happy to go. Their time is done, and they're more than happy to be assisted, and they've told me this. But we're talking about wild animals that we're making that choice for them.
Do you think
so again, we need to think about that.
Do you think more should have been done for the baby whale? That that the SeaWorld was going to do this, and then they decided they were going to do that. And do you think more could have been done, or more could have been understood?
Look, a lot more could have been done. It was the same that there was a baby whale over here in New South Wales that was, had been separated, and they thought it had been abandoned. But I actually connected with that baby whale, and the mother had to make a choice.
Yeah.
She either had to continue with the pod or stay with him.
Yeah.
And which turned out actually to be a girl. And anyway, the mother had moved on. Then they had an adult whale that they said, "Oh, I think this is the mother," and I automatically knew it wasn't, because the mother was not dead in another bay. It turned out to be a male anyway, so it obviously wasn't the mother. But even before that we found that out. As soon as they said, "Oh, we think this dead whale is its mother," I knew it wasn't, because the baby and the mother had informed me that she was gone with the pod, because she had to go for the instinctual thing of survival. Because if she had waited behind with that with her baby, she would then never not been able to catch up, or would have to risk losing control with the pod. And where would she be? Because she knew that things weren't right with him, with the whale. So there's all these sort of things. And I mean, we all know that there's been the story of the whale who was in the movie Free Willy, and people spent millions to raise money to take that whale back to Norway. But the reality was that the whale never wanted to go back to Norway.
Is that
right? It actually wanted to be with people because it was there to teach.
Yeah, yeah.
And the communicators tried to tell them this, but of course they thought, "Oh yeah, we know better." And that whale ended up perishing because it didn't want to go back with the pods, and that's why every time they took it out with a pod, it came back to play with the children in the bay.
Yeah.
So, it's a misunderstanding. It's not so much, the people meant well. They thought they were doing the right thing, but communication is so valuable, isn't it, Leah, even in our species?
I was going to say, is it at this time, these points, that you feel slightly helpless, where you just think, when communicators around the world must be pulling their hair out?
Well, you do feel helpless, but the point is there's so many of these times, isn't there?
Yeah,
Let's be realistic.
Yeah.
There's so many of these times. I'm hoping there will come a time where people start to get more real and start to, realistically, think about things and trust other avenues that aren't necessarily just analytical and science. Because there's a lot to be gained from this level of communication, and the Indigenous people have been using it for centuries. So what's so new about it anyway? The Indigenous people in our own countries, that's why they are so connected to animals, because they believe that we were all created at the same time.
Yep.
They use animals to find food and water. So who's the more evolved?
Exactly, yeah.
And they greatly appreciate their animals. They revere it, as did the Egyptians. And There's many other cultures, the Native American Indians, they never killed an animal without asking the soul of the animal if they could partake of its flesh. If the animal said yes, they killed it humanely. If the animal said no, they moved on to another animal. There was so much respect, and that's what I think we've lost. It's all become a big commercial business, and, you know, that pig has no feelings, and that chicken, you know, that chicken's just rustling around everywhere. It can't be having, you know, conscious thought. Well, I'm here to tell them that they're wrong.
So, the bottom line has to stop being profit, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about.
Oh, of course it is, yeah. You touched on Egyptians before. I did want to ask you, of course, being a mad Egyptian person, the Egyptian deities with Horus, the crocodiles, and all of those things in their symbology, was that just something they talked about to portray the symbolism of something, or were there beings that were half crocodile, half man?
Well, you know, if you look in the ancient teachings, the first Egyptians were actually lion cubs and developed into humans. And not developed as in evolved. It was just a form that they took, if you look into, you know, the ancient studies. But the animals were links to the gods.
Yep.
And the reason they knew they were links to the gods, and their aspects of their species were so highly... They took on that. There was actually this, but they were more in... It's the same as Bastet can be, you know, a full cat or half person, half thing. It was more that the level or the level of energy of that animal was linked to the gods. And then they took on the symbology on it because they wanted to have the aspect of that animal. A little bit like a shaman who might wear a buffalo head or something like that. It was like taking on that aspect. But the actual animals were the links to the gods.
Yeah.
They were in the closest form. And the Egyptians merely were taking on after that.
Isn't that
You know,
intriguing?
taking on that form because of what they stood for.
So the original Egyptians, as you said, were lion cubs. That would account for the dirty great big sphinx.
Well, I have to tell you about that sphinx.
Do tell.
Well, it's a lot older. You know, a lot of people speculated this, but I'm telling you now, I've been inside that sphinx on a journey, and I knew that there was an empty cavity in the left-hand side rear, leg of that. And I was, when I really researched this, I did find that somebody had used sonar or ultrasound on that area, you know, or whatever they do to work out cavities, and they did find an area in that left side, and that there was a maze in there. But when I connected with, and I actually was shown this by Bastet,
Yep.
and she was in full cat form, and she was explaining to me that is much older, and that it was never had a pharaoh's head originally. It was a full lion.
Is that right?
And she told me also that when it was carved into a pharaoh's head by the humans, she said that actually took on the relationship of species, population that should be on the planet. So if you look at it, 1/4 or 1/3 human,
Oh, okay.
2/3 animal,
Yeah.
that's the correct ratio.
So that would mean we're way out.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
We are way out, and
Yeah.
that's the problem.
Wow.
That's the problem. So, way back in Egyptian times, and, you know, the Egyptians, there was never really a time when they weren't advanced, and that's why many of these animals, many of these beings that came in those Egyptian times were brought down from the realms and created that knowledge, and some of them, of course, from Atlantis.
Yep.
And that knowledge was created there and then, because you won't read very much information where Egypt was actually not advanced.
No, that's right.
They didn't kind of start out and then build up to it. It was there right from the beginning. And that's what the animals and other beings have shown me, that they actually came down and provided that information there and then, and were survivors of Atlantis. So, and again, even the Lemurians before Atlantis were all of nature. They were all of the natural elements. All of the humans, the animals, everything was together. And everything respected one another. It was full of love and harmony. And that's how it's supposed to be.
And did the journey that you took and the communication you had with Bastet, did she mention or inform you what the real intention of the pyramids was?
Well, yeah, they showed me that I think there's what they call a king and queen area, and it has these lines, these channels that lead to them. And they showed me that, the animals showed me that the Queen's temple or tomb section is actually of lunar. So it's actually of the moon.
Yep.
And the moonlight actually forms like a pattern down there. Now, in the King's, it's actually the sun. And they showed me that it was for the beings of the realms to come through there and to have their vibrational change, to walk on this earth.
So it's like a doorway or a portal.
It was a portal.
Yeah.
But there was sun and lunar. So in other words, certain beings came in by the sun and left by the lunar, or there was a specific way they did it, and that's why it was all fine tuned, and that's why people say it must have been done by lasers. It wasn't. It was done by very high vibration people in the spirit realm, beings of the spirit realm.
Yeah.
And the animals have shown me that that's how they came through to change DNA and vibration to actually walk on this planet, because, as you know, this planet was very heavy in comparison to some of the realms. So they used that as a coming and going, if you like. And that was what it was used for. And it was merely that they weren't actually the king and queen tombs, because they weren't actually burial sites. It's just what they used them for, the humans.
Yeah, what they...
So they were actually merely portals. All of these, chambers and all that sort of stuff was made for that purpose. And they're much, much older than Egypt.
And the original, I mean, they talk about the pyramids having, capstones and being covered in white limestone and things. I imagine the original status of them would have been more like that. What we see now is probably a shell.
Well, it is, because they're no longer used for that purpose.
Yeah.
They're just used there they're just like remnants of what was, although they are still portals.
Okay.
So, as such, whether they're utilised as much as they used to be, no, but they're still energy portals, because you'll find there's sort of energy portals around the world that are very significant. They are in those sites. And, they are still there. Those energy vortexes are still there. But, as you say, and I am being led to believe by the animals that the Sphinx is possibly older than the pyramids.
Older? Wow. That's
so
interesting.
Yeah. So that is I mean I'm an Egyptian fan as well. I mean, obviously an Egyptian lineage somewhere along the line, the same as you, Leah. But it's fascinating, and how the animals were so revered, and now it's all been turned around, really, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, it's a long step away from where it once was then. I mean, like you say, the imbalance when you hear about what you're saying and you think about the symbology of the Sphinx being, 1/3 humans, 2/3 animals, it's really flipped over.
And, she told me that I have done this before, and that it was much easier back then than it is for me now. But all I'm doing is connecting the ancient with the modern world. And that's what I was doing from Atlantean into Egyptian times. And because there's a book inside there, and it'll show you what your role was, what you did previously. And it was quite amazing that, to actually, to be in that chamber. And I can't tell you how I got in there, because I went through a door through the front porch, but she led me down a maze.
Ah, maybe
and
on
so
purpose.
She knew the way very well.
Yeah.
But not me. So she led me in and led me out. But, very, very amazing stuff. And then she said, you're just doing the same job, but in a different society. So we'll see how it works out this time.
Well, yeah. And I'm thinking, what you were talking about before with the way that we revered the animals. I mean, really, if you look at history, that actually does show. I mean, the Chinese astrology signs are all animals. Our own horoscopes, quite a lot of them, myself being a Capricorn, is the goat. And do you know what I mean? There's again, that animal.
Everything is symbolised by animals.
Yeah, so...
everywhere you look, they knew the importance, because they held a different level of importance back then. And their symbolism and their aspects. And, I mean, I've been taken on journeys where I've been in the Native American Indian sector, where, there's been a teepee, and all the elders, they're all sitting around a circle, but in between every chief or elder is an animal. And it was actually the animals speaking of what would befall the earth. They were actually informing them how the earth would go, how this was going to transpire. And it was actually the animals speaking. So, these ancient times are actually how it was. Not necessarily the way it's being portrayed or the knowledge we know about.
Yes.
And that's why you're seeing all this symbolism everywhere, because they were revered. I mean, even in Egypt itself, if you killed a cat, you were put to death.
Yeah, yeah.
They were mummified, as were the humans. And, you know, all it's done is just over time, these animals have just been put in this other state, and it's not where they belong. And their level of intelligence and knowing is very, very superior, and people just don't realise that, because they just, you know, it's very hard when you look at your cat and you see this fluffy object, you know.
Yeah.
But when you talk to them and you feel their level of knowledge, it far surpasses mine, and it's really, really amazing. And so I see them totally in a different light to most other people. And I'm sure there's people out there listening that are going to say, yes, I understand that, because they've had the same experience.
Yeah, and it makes me keep thinking of the movie Planet of the Apes, you know, where the roles are reversed and the apes are keeping us as pets and making us presuming that we're, you know, of low intellectual ability and, you know, maybe everybody should rent Planet of the Apes and say this is basically what we've done to them, you know.
That's true. It's absolutely true. You know, I mean, even something simple like, you know, when I'm consulting with a cat because, you know, they're moving house and they want to make sure that the cat's comfortable and, you know, whatever the case may be. And the first thing the cats, or even dogs, but especially the cats, will say to me is, why do these humans have to keep moving? Why are they never happy where they are? It's very hard for me to answer some of these questions. I said, well, we have situations where, well, I guess they want to move something bigger and better. Why do they need bigger and better? Why is it so important to them?
So do you find yourself...
The questions they ask.
Do you find yourself constantly apologising for the humans?
Well, yeah, I'm going, yeah, actually you're right.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure why they do that. I said, I guess it's just because of our society, because, you know, we want to have a bigger and better house because it's status to a certain degree, because often we're living in huge houses with only two people.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is a huge resource that we don't need to be doing, but we all do it, or we want to live by the ocean, or, you know, some of it's lifestyle, some of it's, you know, you might have more children, so obviously, you know, you need a bigger place, and I explain that to the animals, but a lot of the time when they make me think, you know, about, geez, why do we, because often there's no reason behind it other than either status, and and they said, and then they're more stressed when we move. Yeah, you know why they're more stressed? Because it probably costs an extra 100,000, or, you know, something they've got to pay back, so they've, you know, overstressed themselves to get this bigger environment that did they really need. So, you know, the animals just sit back and watch us and observe us, and they find some of the things we do quite unbelievable.
Very perplexing to them, yes.
Yeah, it is very perplexing, because they're just very relaxed, and people say, oh, we can't live life like that. I mean, if you think about it, why do we make our lives so complex? Why can't we live more simply?
Yes.
Why can't we go back to the basic principles of yesteryear? Because certainly if we look at the economic market, and especially at the moment, what have we achieved? People are committing suicide all over the place at the moment.
Yes.
Because of their stress of society. And we've done it to ourselves. And so maybe when the animals say, why do humans have to do that, I, you know, honestly have to sometimes sit back and think, let me think about this.
Yes.
Because I don't really know, you know, or I do know, and yes, it is pretty stupid.
Yeah.
How we do some of the things.
Trying to explain it to them when you know yourself that it makes absolutely no sense.
No, and the animals just sit there and, you know, they just can't believe, you know, why we put ourselves through this. And we do put ourselves through it, because all of that, you look at all of the stress on the planet, we have created it by ourselves.
Yes, yes.
You know, we have. There's no stress that just comes. There's a purpose behind it, or we have made the decisions to create that stress.
Yes, that's right.
So, yeah, so the animals actually have taught me so much in a different way of thinking that, yeah, I've started to rethink my own life. Like, is that so important? Wouldn't it be better to have more time to spend relaxing and perhaps to have a life? You know, do we have to work 12-hour days? What's the point of it all?
I tell you what...
You get a better house, or, you know...
Yeah, I tell you what my cat taught me, and it took a long time for me to understand through my cat that it was okay, and I wasn't lazy, and I was utilising my time to the highest possible way I could, just to sit. You know, I've got a porch swing, which I love to just sit, and when I just sit and swing, then I'd start feeling guilty. I should do this, I should do that, I'm wasting my time, blah, 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 blah. And Apollo would get up and join me, and my Papillon gets up and joins me. And after a very long time, I'm, you know, reluctant to say, but it was true, they've taught me that it's okay to take half an hour, and it is incredibly valuable even to just sit. And, the cat does the usual cat thing of just, laying on its back and just, relaxing like only cats can. And how important just that time is to do nothing.
Because we don't have that balance, Leah. We're always doing something. And that's why most people can't hear the animals, because we're too busy in our brains, we're too busy in our bodies. Why do we see that it's lazy? Why is our busyness cannot be counteracted by the same amount of hours relaxing and enjoying, smelling the roses, seeing while we're here, looking around, seeing what's around us, enjoying having the cat sit there, hearing it purr, things like this, why is it so wrong? And I mean, we've all been through it, where we sat down and go, I don't really have time to sit here. But why don't we have time to sit there, and why are we not making time for that? I mean, looking at different, generations, people don't have time for their kids now. They're all off doing sports things, but how many family things are we doing? How many hours a day are we spending with our children, with our families, or are we watching TV, or are we racing off to do something else?
Yeah.
We're no longer spending that time and really getting to know who we are and who we're with. Because everybody just switches off and is stimulated by something else. And that's what the cats and dogs and all of the animals are showing us, that's what we need to do more of.
Yes.
To get in touch with ourselves.
And God bless them for that.
Absolutely.
Trisha, you've been very, very generous with your time tonight. That's an hour just gone like that.
Wow.
Can you imagine? Now, Trisha's website is animaltalk.com.au. It's a fabulous website. And there's actually a story behind this. I remember you told me you were going to tell me. What's the story behind the wolf?
Oh, the story behind the wolf. Not realising, Bo, as you know, was the cat who talked to me on his deathbed.
Yes.
And he got me into all of this. Well, he actually howled at the moon every night.
Did he?
And he used to go to a sequence of windows. We had a glassed-in balcony, and he used to go to one window, look up at the moon and howl, and then he went to the second window, looked up at the moon, and then howled. And I didn't make the correlation. You can't honestly say why, could you? Because there's not many cats who howl at the moon, dogs, but certainly not the cats. And so that was the main reason I have it as a logo, because that is actually Bo. And when Bo passed away, and a new kitten arrived at the house, which is not very normal for me, usually it takes me years. This kitten, who's now called Shay, he, on the second day he was there, went to those windows in exactly the same sequence and howled at the moon.
Is that right?
Yeah, and my husband saw it and said, my God, what's going on?
Yeah.
Because it was just, because I wasn't a communicator then.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. So that's why that wolf was very prevalent. And the wolf is actually my totem.
Okay, yeah.
And so the howling is actually him speaking to the stars. So the wolves actually speak to the stars, not just the moon. They actually speak to the stars. They're calling their ancestors. And so it's very prevalent that I would have that, really, isn't it?
They actually speak to the stars. That's fantastic. So get over to Trisha's website, animaltalk.com.au. You'll see the wolf, you'll see the moon, you'll see what we've just been talking about. I can't begin to thank you so much for the time you've spent with us tonight. I think everything you have to say is so important. I want people to listen carefully, and I want them to embrace everything that Trisha's talking about, because it's so important, particularly in this time. Can I just ask you quickly, Trisha, have the animals said to you anything about that big ominous date of 2012? No,
but just to roll with the energy, to keep moving.
Okay.
Don't remain stagnant. This is not the time to remain stagnant. So anybody out there, you should be searching, finding you, and they said to keep moving because the energy is moving, so move with it.
Okay. And for those of you who are in turmoil at the moment, I find there's two things happening. People are rolling along quite okay, and they're finding synchronicity is almost, everywhere in their lives. Things that they're affirming are coming back straight away. And those people who are rolling with the energy, I'm finding finding amazing things happening in their life and things coming into their life that they need, and it's all just going boom, boom, boom. People who are having turmoil probably need to perhaps stop and think about why that turmoil is being created and why it seems to be so prevalent in their life at the moment. And one way to be able to figure that out truly is through animal communication.
Listen to the animals.
Yeah.
I'll show you the way.
Yeah.
I'll show you which way to go, and I'll show you how to get there.
So the webpage again is animaltalk.com.au. Trisha is going to be in Perth doing some workshops on the 1st and 2nd of November, and then she's coming back for the advance. But all of Trisha's, where she's going to be, her schedule and you know, her things that she's got happening are on her webpage. You can get private consultations. You can arrange a workshop, perhaps arrange a workshop where you are. We're talking about big venue places. This is where we want to go, you know. I'm sure that if you can find a venue in your city, Trisha will be able to fill it, trust me. Thank you so much for your time, Trisha.
Oh, you're welcome, Leah. It's my pleasure. It's always fun talking to you.
Okay, that's Underworld for this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe and blessings to you all.
You've been listening to Australia's own Underworld Show with host Lia Ramses. The Underworld Show is produced in Perth, Western Australia by iProdigy Communications exclusively for Ghost Radio Australia and the Ghost Radio Network. Tune in every Sunday at 8 p.m. Perth time to hear fascinating guests and topics such as the one you just listened to. For more information on upcoming guests, events, and breaking news, visit www.underworldshow.com or www.ghostradio.com.au.